Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this breakfast session, this teaching and learning breakfast session, brought to you now by University of South Australia's Teaching Innovation Unit and our new collaboration with the Australian Awards for University Teaching. Thank you very much for all being there. We're delighted to have with us this month Associate Professor Michelle Reuters from RMIT and the Bridge of Hope Innocence Initiative. She's an AAUT winner from 2023. So we invite winners from the previous year to come along and speak to us. So obviously these are people, award-winning people at the top of their game. And Michelle has some fascinating work to speak to us about today. So there are those of you, I imagine, who are interested in work integrated learning and some of you who are interested in the Bridge of Hope Innocence Initiative, which I'm really looking forward to hearing about today. So before we get started and I introduce you to Michelle, I'd just like to acknowledge the land that we meet on today. I'm in Adelaide, so the Adelaide Plains is the lands of the Kaurna people, and we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the traditional custodians of the Adelaide region, and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still as important to the living Kaurna people today. I'd also like to extend that acknowledgement to whichever country you are joining us from today. And I'd like to also acknowledge any Aboriginal First Nations people that are joining us today. So I'd like to now introduce, and I'll ask her to share her screen. I'll stop sharing my screen. Associate Professor Michelle Reuters from RMIT. Thank you very much for being there, Michelle. And over to you.
Thank you. I'll just get this. Can you see what I have on the screen yet?
No, not just yet.
Okay, so let me do that again. I think I chose the wrong screen. Can you see that now?
No.
Yeah.
Just getting there. Yes.
Got it.
We got
Excellent.
You. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Stuart and I were just talking about my lack of familiarity with Zoom because we're so used to Teams. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about this project. I guess I've spoken about it in a few different ways over the last few months after the award last year, and so I've spoken about it from the context of assessment, how you write award applications. So I have kind of oriented this presentation, I guess, towards the scalability of the project and how a project like this can actually hit a lot of the metrics that a lot of us are working towards. So I'll talk a bit more about that as I go. So just on this page here, this is the current working group in my team. I've got Jared Bartle on my left in the grey, Greg Stratton, who's the manager of the program, obviously myself, Alyssa and Monique. And one of the things I guess I want to emphasise as I go through is this was a really organic, we overuse that word, but it was really a very organic project. It just kind of grew very slowly and I guess very safely. And Alyssa and Monique, for example, they started as undergraduate and postgraduate students and then progressed to volunteers, sessional employees, and now ongoing staff. So it's had quite a significant impact in that way as well. But I'll talk a bit more about that as we go. So we are a workplace. You can see I've got a few stock images that we've used for different applications. We are a workplace for students to investigate wrongful conviction claims. And these are based on factual innocence, which I'll define in a moment. So we have two main aims, and they are to investigate claims of people who say that they have been wrongfully convicted. And we try to establish whether or not there is a factual basis for that, and then work out what we do next with that in terms of having that person's conviction reviewed. But we also have a strong advocacy arm as well. So as a workplace on campus, we are set up and we have dedicated spaces. I'll just put the image that you see on the screen, that little, our media team planted the students that you can see on the computer screen over there. But that is very much how we work these days. And the COVID era, I guess we can call it now, while it was obviously very, very difficult for so many of us, it was also probably a useful time in all of us getting used to hybrid ways of learning. And that was something that we're still leveraging today, and I think quite successfully. So how this works is we've been established for 10 years now. We're having our 10th year anniversary in October on Wrongful Conviction Day, which is the 2nd of October. And we had an opportunity, for those who are not familiar, Innocence projects originated in the United States, where they obviously have a long and established history responding to wrongful conviction claims, primarily in the area of DNA exonerations. And I'm sure quite a few of you would be familiar with that situation in the US. And their model was typically situated in a law clinic and probably very much oriented towards, well, how do we move this legal, what do we do with this legal case? What can we do? Let's find new material, but what can we do with that new material in a legal sense? I'm situated in in the criminology and justice discipline, and I'm in a social science school. So we're not in the law faculty, the law department. And for those of you familiar with the different types of students, criminology and it's also have psychology students are very fact-oriented. So we're also looking for students who are trained in critical analysis and really scrutinising factual situations and looking at them very, very critically. So that worked out very well for us. When I started the project, and I started this in partnership with a not-for-profit organisation, the Bridge of Hope Foundation, it was pretty much at that intersection where there was a lot of emphasis in universities about preparing students for the workplace. A lot of discussions about, the pressure to find internship experiences. So it was actually a really good time for me strategically and practically in a university to say, well, here, this is an opportunity for us to do something that will help address those issues, but also have, potentially transformative impact on students by giving them this really kind of authentic look inside the criminal justice system. So we structured it as a workplace. I was lucky, that room that you see on campus, it's not that small, that's the angle, but it's not large. And we were lucky enough to secure an old classroom and make it our own. We've now expanded to 2 spaces. And so we're able to establish that as a workplace with our own storage facilities and our own computers, etc. And it works in across 2 or 3 semesters. We'll take an intake of students up to about 14. Sometimes we've taken more. Sometimes when we first started, we were running 365 days a year, and that was, so we would run winter semesters and spring semesters and summer semesters, and that was getting really quite difficult for staff. With these internships, the students they'll do around 300 hours. So it's working 12 weeks of a semester, 4 days a week. And so that is, if you're thinking in terms of the kinds of materials and cases, which I'll talk about in a moment, that we get, that's an awful lot of man hours that our students can dedicate to the activities that they're asked to be involved in. As I said, we typically take criminal justice, criminal psychology students, and criminology psychology students, but we've also had students from other universities. even interstate universities, law students, social work students, anyone who meets our selection criteria. And so how it's set up is that students will do this internship through one of their WIL courses. We have in the criminology and justice system, discipline where I am, at postgrad and undergraduate level, we have a double subject. We call them courses. And so that's half of what their load would be for a semester. And that's core. That will be a capstone course for them. But we also have elective courses of the standard credit points. We have a 12 credit point, 24 credit point system. So they can try before they buy. And some students, have got a student at the moment who's going to stay on and do another shorter one after his 24 credit points because he wants to keep doing the work. So I will talk a little bit more about this as I go through, but I just wanted to emphasize, I guess part of the reason I really like talking about it is this is probably one way to describe it is a really large studio looking at a wicked problem, and the wicked problem being, how do we deal with the issue of wrongful convictions, particularly in a really difficult post-conviction review space. I'm not sure how many people here are lawyers or for interested in that area. But the model itself, the idea of having something that students can really get their teeth into, I think why this works and it has been really successful for us is, it's like true crime. Everyone's fascinated in true crime. But it's also, we can always give students something that they are intrigued by. There's always something fascinating that they want to find more about. And I can see how that could be transferable to, a range of other disciplines and fields. And obviously, you'd know more about that in your own fields. So just some examples, and this was particularly helpful for us during COVID when we needed to look, as other people did, for other WIL opportunities for our students. So we've been motoring along for quite a while and quite successfully. And then in 2018, we introduced the Criminal Case Review Project. I've got two examples of that on the screen, and that runs the same way, but our emphasis is not on factual innocence, being able to prove that someone is factually innocent. It's about looking at systemic injustices, bad practices, and what we can do, identifying those, and looking at what we can do with that. So part of this is looking at problems in policing investigations. And so one project you can see to the side is this, the one that's got the Mr. Big sting. But we run it as exactly the same model. So we have a space for them. We have the same situation where students come and do the internship. And I will take you through how we run that workplace in a moment. And during COVID, we developed what we call colloquially DRP, the Disaster Response Project, using exactly the same model online, but getting students to adopt a range of different occupations in a range of different fields and disciplines, and look, they had to cooperate and look holistically at how their industry, their field, their organisation would respond to the COVID disaster, and then how they would negotiate with other agencies. So it was just applying exactly the same principles and the same model, and that also worked quite well. And we haven't used that for a couple of years, but we are going to resurrect that as well. So that's my main point there, that once you have the structure, it is very replicable. So our team, once again, Lucy wasn't in the first shot there. She's the most photogenic of us, so she really should be front and centre. We come from, I think part of the reason why this works is we really do come from very diverse backgrounds. Jared, myself, and Alyssa down on the left have law backgrounds. A couple of us have been in practice, so we have that that additional perspective. But we also come in with different pedagogical approaches. So Jared, Alyssa, and I are very familiar with problem-based learning and how that can be really effective as a teaching and learning strategy. Alyssa and Lucy also have psychology backgrounds. Jared has a forensic background, Monique has criminology, and Greg has the addition of educational background. So that works really well for us. When we were, in terms of the application for the AAET award, it was really helpful in making us think about why it is we do the things that we do. Why it is we teach in the way that we do and with the way we run the project in the way that we do. And it really made us, I spoke about this in another presentation, it really made us reflect on our pedagogy, because we are coming from, as I said, very different pedagogical approaches. Greg comes very much from a transformative educational approach. So melding that with problem-based learning, created its own, slightly different strategy. So that was really helpful for us. The other things that I'll emphasize, I think what has worked really well for us is collaboration. It's a joy in this to collaborate. It's just so much fun, not just with the people that I work with, but with the students, because where for them, it's looking for that one thing, that amazing thing that will maybe prove that someone is innocent. And I was just walking to my office yesterday, and Alyssa had suddenly found something on her, a student had sent her a message about something that they'd found, and that just became our afternoon, just theorizing, researching, just kind of finding out whether or not this thing that we thought was really exciting could actually be helpful. So it is very much about that. It's very much student and teacher centered. We do talk about it being very much a collaboration and very much a reflective, collaborative practice, because there's so many opportunities for self-reflection. There's with students in groups, with the students, with us within the team, because you're always bouncing off new ideas and then having your perspectives challenged and slightly shaped. So it is, I think, probably a good way to describe it is it's just slowly ever changing. I can see students' perspectives change through those conversations that they have, and because they've actually thought about their own beliefs and how they approach different situations. In that, because of the cases that we have, and some of these are notorious in media, they're really well known. Some of them involve horrific offences, and we and the students it can be quite difficult to remain neutral. Being a fact-based enterprise, that is the thing that I emphasise, really kind of withdrawing and looking at the facts objectively. But it can be really quite difficult, particularly, as I said, if it's something that is notorious or it is something that people feel very strongly about. So that's where reflection can, and the emphasis on reflection can be really helpful for students in learning how to deal with their own personal emotions in that context. Being a workplace, and we do run it as a professional workplace, it really does give, accessible WIL I know we use these words a lot, but it is very authentic. It is very much based in the real world. We are dealing with real people. We talk to the people who are incarcerated. We talk to police experts, and the students do as well. And I will talk about this particularly, I think, for us with this project, the learning, the importance of lived experience and how it shapes all of our experiences is incredibly important, and is probably the most transformative aspect of this for the students. And the last point I'll just make that it is really truly a continually evolving community practice. It just kind of keeps moving and expanding, sharing knowledge. As our students graduate and go out into their diverse fields, they input back into the process. We keep those networks and so on. It's a good thing I've only got 23 slides, otherwise I could talk about this forever. I think what is possibly different, or not different, but what makes this so wonderful for all of us is that we get to do the thing that we love. It's a passion project, but from a university experience, it is the one-stop shop for teaching, engagement, and research. And it's just been so fantastic. So what the students do, this is one of our stock images, but that is a real kind of outline in the background. So they investigate factual claims. We only look at factual claims. We won't look at cases that involve tricky legal issues. And what we are looking at is whether or not there is any reason, can we move forward with this? Are there facts that we can find? Even if they're difficult facts, like hard to find facts, we will still take the investigation on. And as I said, we also do spend quite a bit of time, not me, I know nothing about social media, but the students are amazing, and my team are also fantastic about that. So with our learning and teaching roles, it really is kind of a multifaceted project. So we have this real world objective that we're aiming to achieve, and which I talk about in different contexts as well. But we are very much, obviously, a teaching facility, our learning and teaching roles. And so we're now quite practiced in working in that dual face-to-face online environment. I've just got a little screenshot of the working from home induction, which we introduced during COVID, because we work with quite difficult materials. So the cases that the students look at, they include murders. They can include sexual assaults. So we really need to make sure that students are in a safe place when they're dealing with this. They know, how to get support. So we provide them with resilience training, as it's very much one of the first things that they do during their induction. And we are very careful in how we uncover that kind of information. Although most of them seem so well versed with true crime and really gory shows that doesn't seem to be a problem. Most of our materials are housed online. We use Microsoft Teams. That's where our case materials are kept, and that's our working communication platform. We also train them over a couple of weeks in ethical procedures, how to deal with confidential information, because we aim to get all of the files associated with a criminal case, and that is all the documents went to court, the police brief, even materials that didn't make it to court, that we've been able to get from other sources. And we have to be conscious that in those documents, they're the names of private individuals who would be witnesses or, have other roles. And obviously their privacy needs to be protected. Conflict of interest disclosures, particularly working in, we have cases from across Australia, but working in this situation, we always need to be alert, do you know anyone in this case? RMIT is a large university. There's always a possibility that someone in a case is situated at RMIT. So we need to be really aware of those issues and then make that decision. We also spend a lot of time training them how to critically analyse materials. That's probably the biggest part of what they do. Certainly research skills, it's legal research skills. they do a lot of social media research. They very well versed in going to microfiches in the in the state library, going back through archives of newspapers, any kind of documents that they can find that aren't available in an online platform. So they're very, very good at that, better than we are in many cases. They will learn to write professionally because they will be writing or drafting emails to people, correspondence, writing freedom of information applications. Communication skills and learning to use online sharing platforms. So as I said, we do use Teams, and we do use Teams chat a lot. And for those who are familiar with Teams and OneDrive and SharePoint and trying to find, that document even in a typical university context, so learning how to label, store, find, and how you appropriately communicate is a big part of what we do. Sorry, I've already spoken about some of these, but this is our amazing group from winter during COVID. They were the first group. And what was, I'll just mention this at the moment, what we found that students develop really close relationships. They love the collaboration, particularly in those moments of isolation during COVID, where they felt really isolated from the university communities and what was normal. And they love this being able to share and communicate in this way. And as I say, I've emphasised the aspect of collaboration with us and them before. So I'll just move on. I have a little video. It won't even matter if the sound doesn't work, but hopefully the video will work, which will show a typical day. So we meet with them, and I should explain from a staffing perspective, we get no funding, but this is built into our typical workload. So part of it will, as I said before, part of it will be our teaching responsibilities, part of it will be engagement, running a campus workplace, and part of it is a great part of it is our research allocation. We have, and different people in our team will take different roles. That's Greg on the screen. We are in our university council chambers for a meeting. We just discovered we could book it, so it was an amazing place to be for the students. So that is Greg obviously beaming in for one of our joint meetings. So some of our staff will meet the students at the start of every day. And as you can see on the screen, just to, how you're going, got any problems, do you know what to do next? Even have a quick kind of brainstorm about what needs to be done, and just make sure that it's set up for for the rest of the day. But then they'll also stay in contact during Teams with the Microsoft Teams chat. What you see on the screen there is our weekly wrap meeting, which I will be going to after this. And for me, it is the best part because the students lead it. They will tell us where their research has led. I walked into the room the other day and we've got the kind of vacant spaces on the wall, and they've just mapped out this whole scenario with a timeline, just trying to find kind of a loose thread. And it's it's honestly the best part of this experience for me, just seeing their excitement, their ideas, how this can take a case forward. So that's what we call the weekly wrap meeting. We do a lot of theorising, and what will be this is one of our cases, and I think this is possibly done by the Winter Group, and I just got it as an example. They will do a handover. So as one group will finish a semester, they'll prepare a handover. It can be a presentation, can be just a long document. And so that a new group coming in can then pick up that case. And this is just an example. They do amazing presentations. Now hopefully this will work, and it won't matter if it's a sound, it's just the typical background music. So that was just one of our promo videos, and obviously you can see chocolate features a lot. There's not, we have 2 rooms, and there's always chocolate somewhere. So I don't want to. I'm just conscious of the time as well, so I'm just going to move on to what it is that we do in innocence investigations and our process, and hopefully you can see how this can actually be. This can be fascinating for students. It really taps into that needing to know part of their brain. It's not uncommon for students not to sort of just keep thinking, just going further down those rabbit holes, even after their cases are finished, their day has finished. So our aim is to, for those of you who are not familiar, most criminal cases are legally aided, and there's certainly not enough legal aid funding for anyone to read, listen, view everything in a criminal case. And that can be really deeply problematic because it can mean that they miss something vital. So at the very least, what we can promise is that we can turn over everything. We can, I have one case we've had for a few years where there are so many thousands of hours of recordings that we're still going. So my aim is that, that this is certainly the job that we can do. We will turn over every leaf and exhaust every possible avenue of inquiry. I was describing it to a group of people the other day, saying, like, if you think of one factual situation here, and we just try to exhaust every possibility, every counter possibility, every alternative around that fact, and then move on to the next fact. We start very much from the ground up. So we start from the crime scene, even before the crime scene, which is a little bit different to most legally oriented investigations, because they'll usually start from, well, what went wrong at the trial. So we start earlier and we look for what was missed, what was overlooked. Is there something that was mentioned that didn't feature in the trial? We try to track it down. We make freedom of information applications. We ask everyone. We talk to witnesses again. We try to track down material. Very much aim to separate, as I said, the legal from the factual. Students spend a lot of time kind of coding and separating. So because we're in a social science school, kind of adopted social science methodologies for this. And so really applying research methods to how they code, qualitative research methods to how they code, categorize and analyze information. So there's an awful lot of analysis, and I just need to acknowledge that this is a screenshot from the ABC series, the case of Kelly Lane, which was one of our cases, and that visual shot just gives you an idea of, kind of the mass of information available. So our criteria, so we have some criteria because it's about factual investigations. But we also have some criteria because we're a teaching institution and we need to protect the students. So it must be a criminal conviction. There have to be facts that we can investigate. We do exclude cases where it's not possible, it's just simply not possible to factually prove that the person is innocent, because there's just simply, like, if it's in a situation where there's an alleged the person was convicted of a sexual assault, if there were no witnesses or no way of independently proving that there was no consent, then we certainly don't take the case. We certainly don't take cases where consent is an issue, and we don't take cases involving tricky legal arguments around self-defense and etc. For students' protection, obviously, we limit the content of some cases. Some cases we just never release to students because of the content, and we'll just do those ourselves. And we've also we added it a few years ago, we will not take cases that risk exposing students to risk. So if you bear in mind that if we are investigating someone, if someone truly is innocent, then there's someone out there who is truly guilty. So we do waive those safety options as well. We have our our facilities are anonymous. We don't advertise our presence. So it'd be impossible to find us unless you were aware where we were. This just gives you an idea, just a grab of some of the information. This one at the centre here, and it goes on, that is just one case, and that's because it came through in hard copy. And that also came with all these additional documents. And this is part of these actually all across the top come from the same case, and all of these documents weren't in this folder. So it's quite large. We have a lot of storage. We have a storage room apart from facilities. This is just another shot, all those papers across the top as well, just giving you an idea of how they, you see there's a lot of mind mapping. We've gone through different ways of doing it. We've trialed different software about how to, get these mind maps, these chronologies visually. We're very much about having that display, very similar to the way police have it in police shows. Very foolishly, I got a couple of those clear screens because I thought that would be wonderful to have. And it's not, it's really annoying, particularly in a really busy room like that where you're writing on a clear screen. And anyway, so that wasn't successful. I really wanted one. And yeah, so the students will put that together, and it just makes it, you can see patterns in how they present information. So I'll just show you on that one at the back there. It became really significant because we could actually see a pattern of racial bias just by the excerpts. You probably would have seen it eventually on, on paper by noticing it, but it was just by having it there. It just, it was just speakers were on it. So that was really great for us. I've spoken about, I will finish soon. I've spoken about the transformative aspect, and I have spoken about this before. I knew what we wanted to do because I was approached to set up an innocent project at RMIT, but I'd always wanted to set one up because I knew about them. But we weren't really sure, and I knew I wanted it to be a workplace. I thought that was the only workable model for us. But really, it's kind of, I really didn't know what was going to happen next. And it's just kind of grew organically. And this young man, Khalid Baker, is one of the earliest, this is one of the longest cases we've had. I think we took his case in 2014 when we started. We're still working with him. But it was, and I hope I haven't spoken about this to other people who are listening here, but it was when I went up to see him, he was incarcerated. And I got his side of the story, and I realised that well, it certainly was really impactful, but it was also the first time that his story was visible to the public. No one would have heard it before because he stayed silent at the police station. He stayed silent at his trial. And he showed and continues to show students how you can see, a potentially neutral piece of information can take on very different meanings depending on the particular, the perspective that you're coming from. And so there was very much it was his case on the back of the wall there, and that racial aspect to it was really obvious when I spoke to him and got his perceptions. I won't talk to it. You can look at the case online. I've got a little screenshot of one of the media approaches. Anyway, so he was definitely the inspiration. I won't talk too much more about him, but just briefly, his background. He was a young champion boxer when he was wrongfully convicted of murder. He was 17 when the crime or the incident happened. And he was on his way to the Commonwealth Games. He was on a training camp and then was heading towards the Commonwealth Games. And he spent 13 years in prison. He served the entirety of the sentence. And then was until his eligibility for parole period. And on his release, he picked up his boxing career, and we were all there for that moment. He won the Victorian Championship, and it was just for someone dealing, and there was not a person who's looked at his material in the media and listened to him, I think, who would think that he is guilty. And just such an inspirational approach. You can tell I can keep talking about it forever. So it's very much, if we have not been successful in having his conviction overturned, and it's not through want of effort. But we also have an ongoing role in promoting and talking about the problems of post-conviction review and the limitations of post-conviction review. And the students get really passionate in that aspect as well. And that's cleared on the left is when that was when got the disappointing outcome from, I won't play this, but that's just a shot of the 60 Minutes coverage of him. And that will lead me into talking about, we do use media and we have, I think, a pretty good relationship with the different media organisations we work with. And we use it to help us in a case. We don't use it casually, for the sake of getting media, for the sake of having, extra for your CV. They are incredibly useful because it can lead to public information. In each one of those cases that I have up there, we've had lots of public information come in as a result of the media. But also because they're journalists, and we work very similarly to journalists because we are fact, from the ground up investigations. We can benefit from their resources and the information that they find to advance our investigations. So it's been, I think, a mutually beneficial relationship for us. Just coming to the end, so there's time for questions. Advocacy is really a big thing for us. We've probably stepped it up a little bit over the last few years. So the students will run Wrongful Conviction Day every year. They'll have a social media campaign. A few years ago, we gave Khalid access to our social media. So that was a fantastic promotion. We've run, roundtables. And most recently, we've, that little excerpt there, we've been visible at advocating for reform of the no body, no parole provisions in New South Wales. And I think possibly you can see how these are things that students can really become invested in, and particularly when they can see an outcome. Still waiting on the no body one though. So in terms of our outcomes, our students, I won't read them out because you can see them on the screen. So they go out to very diverse careers. And obviously most of them go to occupations where they can't give us information that can be helpful, but they do continue to support the Innocence Initiative. And, where they can, where it's not in any form of breach of their employment obligations, then, they are as helpful as they can be. We also co-publish with some students. We have, I've got another slide to come, so I'll show how that goes, but we make submissions, we lobby for reform. I'm drying up, so it's a good thing I'm coming to the end. And just some of the outcomes, I've kind of divided them into two parts. So from a university perspective, these are a lot of students have completed these internships, and completing these internships has been a really useful aid for them in the next step in transitioning to employment, because of the practical experience, but also because their experience looked very good on their CVs. We get many offers for support, volunteer, most of which it's not possible to take because we don't have the capacity to supervise. And that total of 88,000 hours, I just want to flag that, that is a lot. If legal aid is only giving the equivalent of 1 week to prepare, with a normal working day being 36 hours, and for one person to look into a case, you can see, I think, hopefully, how much this can potentially be beneficial. In terms of the other side of the coin, it's certainly expanded our engagement in research in the team. So, we've got a number of publications, but we've also got that ongoing community practice through one completed PhD. 6 of our BOHII graduates are currently PhD candidates, and numerous honours graduates. And we always aim to, for that to lead to publications for them and onto the next stage. So it's yeah, it's very much, as I said at the beginning, very much I guess a one-stop shop for everything that we need to do at a university in terms of teaching engagement and research, plus having that, useful dimension for the students, which is obviously its main objective. And that is it. That is it for me. I hope I didn't go too much over time, but open to any questions if anyone has any.
Thank you very much, Michelle. That was really, really fascinating. Yeah, I've got a question to kick us off, if that's okay. And if anyone has questions, you can raise your hand, or you could just post them in the Q&A window. You mentioned the criteria for students coming into your program. So you obviously draw students from multidisciplinary fields. So what are the criteria for students coming into the program?
We advertise it with other placements in place, and we advertise it across our students. So we'll look at GPA, and principally we were looking at students that who have a very good GPA. We'll also do an interview. They'll have to write a submission about why they want to be involved, what their thoughts are about wrongful convictions. It'll be about that written application. They'll also be warned in advance, like you will be looking at graphic materials. How do you think you will respond with that? What is your, do you have a plan and how to deal with it? So all of those, and then that's also canvass again in the interview.
Now, do you, is it only Victorian cases, or do you work Australian-wide?
We've got the cases from across Australia. I should have pointed out there are innocence projects in other universities, but the people who apply, they just want help, so they'll just go. Yeah.
Okay, so are you the only Innocence Initiative in Australia at this time?
No, so there's a project. Griffith University was the first. Melbourne University had a project for a couple of years, but that ended. There's a project at Edith Cowan University in WA, Newcastle University and Sydney University. So it's just us at the moment. Okay. I mean, a lot of universities have been interested in having one. And there's certainly a lot of interest in your home state, Stuart, just no university has actually done it yet.
Okay, well, I think there are some people here in this chat who might be thinking, let's get one started at our new university when we've merged, but we'll see how that goes.
It'll be great, yeah.
We'll reach out to you. So Matt Thurgood comments that this is an amazing program, Michelle. Great hearing about it. And he wonders, do you take students from other institutions?
Yes, we do. So it would just be the straightforward cross-institutional enrolment application. Usually because it's usually that would be the shorter one, because I think, unless there's room in somebody's program of study to do 4 days a week and do a 24 credit point one. Yeah. But yeah, certainly we've done that several times before, and we can do that remotely. All of our materials are digitized. Yeah.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. Well, if nobody else has any questions, now's your time to raise your hand and ask Michelle any questions you have. If you don't, we'll say a huge thank you to Michelle. Fascinating project, and yeah, I really would like to ask you about some of the specific cases, but I'm sure it's not that ethical. So once again, thanks very much from the breakfast session for coming along. It was really interesting. And I'm sure you'll get some feedback, and people are already posting. Thank you so much. Fabulous presentation. So thank you very much for being there, Michelle. We really appreciate your time this morning. And
my pleasure.
Thank you for coming along this morning. And I hope you all have a fantastic day. So thanks very much. Bye. See you next time.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Stuart.
Bye, Michelle. Bye.
Bye. How do I leave? Leave.